William Dalrymple has created an audience for historical scholarship on modern South Asia through his meticulous research and riveting prose, exposing the contradictions of the colonial presence in India. In this magisterial new work, he pivots to the world before the rise of the West, and spanning the period from 250 before the Christian era to 1200 of the Christian era, the book puts India at the center of the genesis and circulation of ideas, religion, and trade across a wide swathe of territory from the Red Sea to the Pacific. And in doing so, he rescues South Asian civilization from the condescension and ignorance of much of colonial history writing. As a professional historian myself, I learned something new from every page of this marvelous, wide ranging book, which wears its tremendous scholarship lightly. A classic that will become a guide to a generation of readers on the meaning of Indian civilization.
Being Hindu, being Indian, Vanya Vedehi Bhargav offers a strikingly original and deeply researched re examination of Lala Lajpat Rai's political thought. Moving beyond the simplified popular image of Rai as a precursor to later Hindutva ideologies, Bhargav uncovers the layered tensions that shaped his understanding of Hindu identity and Indian nationhood. She traces how Rai grappled with the push and pull between imagining Hindus as a distinct nation and envisioning a broader, plural Indian polity, one that could hold together multiple religious nationalities without demanding cultural assimilation. By situating Rai within the wider intellectual and political currents of his time, Bhargav restores complexity to a figure often flattened in contemporary debates. This thoughtful and timely work compels readers to reconsider the meanings of nationalism, pluralism, and belonging in India's past and present, marking it as a significant contribution to the study of modern India. We, the jury, have noted Bhargav's magisterial survey of a tumultuous time in Indian history and the academic rigor with which she has located Lala Lajpat Rai during this time.
The next book in the shortlist is Uma Chakravarti's The Dying Lineage, The Crisis of Political Power in the Mahabharata. Uma Chakravarti's The Dying Lineage looks at the Mahabharata as a text of a period of transition, depicting the transformation from kin-based chiefdoms to monarchical kingdoms in the Indo-Gangetic Doab in early and mid-first millennium BC. While there are historical studies situating the Mahabharata in the above-mentioned context, Chakravarti brings a fresh insight by studying this transition through a feminist lens, dissecting the composition of the royal household by bringing an intersectionality of gender, caste, and class. Drawing reference from anthropological studies of different societies, Chakravarti showcases how the emergence of royal patrilineal in the sedentary agricultural Janapada depends on the reification of the womb and regulation of women's sexual and reproductive labor, since the necessities of patrilineal descent always threatens the Bharatakuru lineage with an anxiety of extinction. Since the figures from the margin, the Dasiputra or the Sutaputra, cannot be allowed to access the lineage-based sovereignty, the crisis depends and reaches a breaking point of a bloody catastrophic war in Chakravarti's interpretation, which provides a new meaning to why the text is supposed to represent the end of an era.
The next book in the shortlist is Casting the Buddha, A Monumental History of Buddhism in India by Shashank Shekhar Sinha. The word monument comes from the Latin verb monere, which means to remind. Shashank Shekhar Sinha's book, Casting the Buddha, is a monumental history, a history of memories of Buddhism as they are commemorated through different monuments, forming a tangible heritage. Sculptures, images, stupas, tablets, shrines, they are all present in the book, as the author uses them to tell us about the lives of people who created and inhabited these memorials of the Buddha. The author depicts them as sites of memory and as sites of social and cultural interactions as well. The first part of the book connects the historical evolution of Buddhism with the transitions in artistic representations, relics, stupas, images, and ideas spread across the subcontinent. The second part deals with the UNESCO World Heritage Sites across India that are related to Buddhism. And the final part narrates the modern history of Buddhism, the colonial commemoration, as well as the second coming of the Buddha with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Uh, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, as he interpreted Buddhism afresh in the 20th century. These narratives around the memorial sites are complemented by images of the tangible heritage as well. The book, however, is not a travel guide. It's a generous effort to offer that essential takeaway of any historical narrative, that is, interpretation. For example, after describing the physical and ideological importance of Nalanda, the author gives a detailed explanation regarding the widespread belief that the Khalji invasion was responsible for the destruction of Nalanda. Quoting from several contemporary and authentic source materials, he offers a textured understanding of the events. Similarly, the empathetic understanding of Buddhism 2.0 or Navayana, as brought about by Dr. Ambedkar, is indicative of the author's historical sensitivity. All in all, these are the things, according to the jury, that make Casting the Buddha a very readable historical narrative.
The next book in the shortlist is Faisal Chowdhury's South Asia, the British Empire, and the Rise of Classical Legal Thought Towards a Historical Ontology of the Law. This is a dense book, not the easiest to read, but Chowdhury makes some very important points. Lying at the intersection of law and history, Chowdhury poses a seemingly simple question: what is law? To answer it, he employs a historical ontological approach to explore the concept of jurisprudence alongside the legal developments that unfolded under British colonial rule in South Asia between the mid 18th and early 20th centuries. He unpacks the conceptual vocabulary through which the ontology of the legal was constituted. He revisits the discourse on property and contract in the colonial public sphere. And most importantly, he draws on the intellectual tradition of classical legal thought to complicate the connection often drawn between legal change under colonialism on the one hand and political philosophies, ideologies, or disciplinary discourses on the other. This is a remarkable book on law in history, a legal history of colonial rule in South Asia that engages with questions central to philosophical jurisprudence and legal theory. Yes, this is indeed a book that the jury suggests that one reads.
Being a member of the jury for the Karwaan Book Award for the
year 2025 has been a most enriching experience for me, despite the many years that I have spent in academic research, teaching, writing. The range of books has been amazing. We had a very large cache of books to choose from, and the jury members represented not just academics and historians, but writers who were experts in different fields, in culture, in Urdu writing, authors with expertise in Adivasi histories, in histories of nationalisms and communisms, and I could go on. It would suffice to say that it was a very expert, learned, and representative jury that decided on the shortlist for the Karwaan Book Award for 2025. It was a tough job to select 5 books for the shortlist from the long list of 10 books. We did try to have a representative selection in the sense that, we obviously didn't want a short list of 5 books from academic books from ancient Indian history, for example. So I thought it was a wonderful and representative short list and many of the books just suggested themselves, like they just walked into the shortlist. In fact, most of them, it was quite amazing how how much consensus there was on the books, and from a popular and yet very vast learned history like Dalrymple's The Golden Road, to a more detailed and yet a book which was for a general audience. It had a very big appeal. Shashank Sinha's Casting the Buddha, because of the very original approach it adopted of writing the history of Buddhism from an interpretation of monuments and heritage sites rather than the usual basing of the history of religion in reading of texts. There was a very exciting new work by Vanya Bhargava, and of a very important figure in India's freedom struggle. And again, the books in the short list, I would say, represent what was the best of publishing in history in the year 2024. So we are absolutely delighted to present this shortlist to the public, and I'm sure that it would bring attention to these very exciting new works and encourage more writing in history to come forward for the next year's award.